Imagine a line that stretches for 5,525 miles. It cuts through dense forests. It runs across vast prairies. It splits the Great Lakes and climbs over the Rocky Mountains. For more than 100 years, this line, the border between the United States and Canada, was known as the longest undefended border in the world. It was a symbol of something rare in geopolitics: trust. It was the physical proof that two sovereign nations could grow rich together, not by building walls, but by building bridges. But today, that era of trust is dead. The bridges are burning, and the smoke from that fire is signaling the end of the North American economic empire. In 2025, we are watching a catastrophe unfold in real time. It is not a military invasion. It is not a natural disaster. It is an economic suicide pact signed by politicians in Washington and Ottawa. The world's most integrated trade relationship is disintegrating before our eyes, and the consequences are going to be far more brutal than high prices at the grocery store. We are talking about the deindustrialization of the American Midwest. We are talking about the collapse of Canadian prosperity. And most terrifying of all, we are talking about the moment when the West officially handed the keys to the global economy over to Asia. This is the story of how the United States and Canada decided to destroy each other, and why the only winner in this war is China. The first domino, Stellantis. To understand how a relationship this strong falls apart this fast, we have to look at the first domino. It didn't happen in a government building. It happened on a factory floor in Brampton, Ontario. This is the home of Stellantis, the massive conglomerate behind Jeep, Chrysler, and Ram. For decades, this plant was a jewel in the crown of North American manufacturing. It employed thousands of workers. It supported hundreds of local suppliers. It was the beating heart of the local economy. But recently, the executives at Stellantis made a cold, hard calculation. They looked at the rising trade tensions. They looked at the threat of new US tariffs. And they decided that Canada was no longer a safe place to build cars for the American market. So, they pulled the plug. They announced they are moving the production of the popular Jeep Compass to Belvidere, Illinois. On the surface, if you are an American voter, this sounds like a victory. You hear, jobs coming home. You hear, made in America. But you are being sold a lie. This was not a business decision driven by efficiency. This was a panic move, driven by political fear. And here is the reality that the press releases won't tell you. When you force a company to rip up a supply chain that has existed for 30 years, costs don't go down, they skyrocket. That factory in Illinois will now have to source parts from a fractured network. The efficiency of the just-in-time delivery system is broken. So, who pays for that inefficiency? You do. The price of that Jeep isn't going down because it's made in Illinois. It's going up because the system that built it efficiently has been destroyed. And the tragedy is, this is just one model. This is just one factory. Multiply this story by thousands of companies across the continent. Ford, General Motors, Honda, Toyota. They are all looking at their spreadsheets right now. They are all realizing that the North American automotive ecosystem, the envy of the world, is no longer viable. The Stellantis move wasn't a homecoming. It was an evacuation, friendly fire, the boomerang effect. Let's dig deeper into the mechanics of this disaster. Most people think of trade like a simple transaction. I sell you an apple. You give me $1. If I tax your apple, I make money. That is how trade worked in the 18th century. But in 2025, that is not how the world works. Especially not in the auto industry. The North American auto sector is not a series of transactions. It is a single, living organism. Here is a statistic that should be tattooed on the forehead of every policymaker in Washington. An automotive part, a piston, a sensor, a piece of stamped steel crosses the US-Canada border up to 8 times before it becomes a finished car. 8 times. Think about what that means. Iron is mined in Minnesota. It crosses into Canada to be forged into steel in Hamilton. That steel crosses back to Michigan to be stamped into a door. That door goes back to Ontario to be painted and assembled. It returns to Detroit to be married to the chassis. It goes back to Windsor for final quality checks. And finally, it ships to a dealership in Ohio. This is the miracle of the North American supply chain. It allowed us to compete with Europe and Asia for 40 years. Now, introduce a tariff into that cycle. If the US puts a 25% tariff on Canadian imports, you aren't taxing that part once. You are taxing it every single time it crosses the line. You are compounding the cost at every stage of production. By the time that car rolls off the assembly line, it is mathematically impossible for it to be price competitive. This is what economists call the boomerang effect. The United States fires a missile at Canada to protect American industry. But because the industries are so intertwined, the missile loops around and blows up the American factory. We are already seeing the fallout in the Rust Belt. Small American manufacturers in Ohio and Michigan are panicking. They make the specialized bolts, the plastic clips, the electronic harnesses that go into Canadian cars. If Canadian factories shut down because of US tariffs, those American suppliers have nobody to sell to. They will go bankrupt. Their workers will lose their jobs. This is the definition of friendly fire. We are killing our own soldiers to win a war that shouldn't exist. And where is the USMCA in all of this? The United States-Mexico-Canada agreement was supposed to be the gold standard. It was supposed to prevent exactly this kind of chaos. But today, the USMCA is a zombie deal. It walks, it talks, but it has no soul. The agreement is up for review in July 2026, and the uncertainty surrounding that date is more damaging than the tariffs themselves. Capital is a coward. Money hates uncertainty. No CEO is going to invest billions of dollars in a new plant when they don't know if the trade agreement will survive the next election cycle. So, investment stops. Innovation dies. And the factories rust. The energy weapon. It's not just cars. If you think this dispute is limited to cars, you are missing the most dangerous part of the picture. The real leverage, the real weapon that Canada holds, is not steel or aluminum. It is energy. There is a myth in the United States that America is energy independent. Politicians love to say it. Crowds love to cheer for it. But it is functionally untrue. Yes, the US produces a lot of oil, but it produces light, sweet crude. Here is the problem. Most US refineries, the massive complexes in Texas and the Midwest, were built decades ago. They were engineered to process heavy, sour crude. They cannot run efficiently on the light oil that America produces. So, where does the US get this heavy crude? It used to come from Venezuela. It used to come from the Middle East. But today, it comes from Canada. In 2024, Canada supplied 61% of all US crude oil imports. Let that sink in. 61%. The American economy runs on Canadian oil. Now, imagine if Ottawa decides to retaliate. Imagine if the Canadian government says, if you tax our cars, we will tax your oil. Or worse. Imagine if they simply decide to stop selling it to us. For 50 years, Canada was a captive market. They had no way to export their oil except south to the US. But that changed this year. The expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline is complete. For the first time in history, Canada can pump nearly 1 million barrels of oil a day directly to the Pacific Ocean. They can load that oil onto supertankers, and they can ship it to China. They can ship it to India. They can ship it to Japan. If Canada pivots its energy exports to Asia, the United States faces an immediate supply shock. Refineries in the Midwest would run dry. Gas prices would spike by $2, $3, maybe $4 a gallon overnight. Inflation would return with a vengeance. This is the hidden gun that Canada has pointed at the American economy. And by pushing them into a trade war, we are daring them to pull the trigger. The breadbasket war. Food security. But the pain doesn't stop at the gas pump. It follows you home to your kitchen table. We are entering the breadbasket war. Canada is the second largest export market for American farmers. They buy billions of dollars of American corn, soybeans, fruits, and vegetables, but the relationship goes both ways. Canada is the world's largest producer of potash. Potash is the critical fertilizer that American farmers need to grow their crops. Without it, yields collapse. Without it, food prices explode. If this trade war escalates, Canada has a very easy target. They can slap a retaliatory tariff on American agricultural products. We saw this happen before. During previous trade disputes, Canada targeted Kentucky bourbon. They targeted Wisconsin cheese. They targeted Washington apples. They know exactly which states are politically important. They know exactly how to inflict maximum political pain on US lawmakers. Imagine the scenario in 2025. American farmers are already struggling with high interest rates and extreme weather. Now, suddenly, their biggest customer stops buying. Prices for corn and soy crash. Farm bankruptcies across the Midwest spike. At the same time, the cost of fertilizer skyrockets because of tariffs on Canadian potash. It is a perfect storm, and the victim is the American family. You will pay more for bread. You will pay more for meat. You will pay more for fuel. This trade war is effectively a massive tax increase on the poor and the middle class, and it is entirely self-inflicted. The vacuum. Enter Asia. So, we have established that North America is tearing itself apart, but geopolitics abhors a vacuum. When one power bloc fractures, another one rises to take its place. While Washington and Ottawa are busy fighting over the past, Asia is busy building the future. Look at the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. This is the world's largest trade bloc. It includes China. It includes the ASEAN nations. It includes Japan and South Korea. It includes Australia. Note who is missing: the United States. While we are building tariff walls, they are tearing down barriers. They are integrating their supply chains. They are standardizing their digital trade rules. And capital is noticing. Global investment funds are looking at North America and seeing risk. They see unpredictable policies. They see broken treaties. They see higher costs. So they are moving their money. Foreign direct investment is flowing out of the USMCA zone and into Southeast Asia. Factories that should have been built in Mexico are being built in Vietnam. Tech hubs that should have been in Canada are rising in Indonesia. But the most dangerous shift is political. Canada is a Pacific nation. They are a member of the CPTPP, the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. If the United States continues to treat Canada like a hostile state, Ottawa will have no choice but to pivot. They will have to deepen their ties with Asia to survive. We are already seeing the signs. Chinese state-owned enterprises are quietly moving into the Canadian mining sector. They are buying up stakes in lithium mines. They are securing cobalt supplies. They are locking down the critical minerals needed for the electric vehicle revolution. While the US argues about tariffs on finished cars, China is buying the raw materials needed to build them. They are playing chess. We are playing checkers. And we are losing. The ultimate strategic nightmare for the United States is a Canada that is economically dependent on China. For a century, the US has enjoyed a buffer zone of friendly, compliant neighbors. But if that buffer zone turns into an economic outpost for Beijing, US national security is compromised in a way we have never seen before. The end of the North American century. We need to stop pretending that this is just business as usual. We need to look at the hard truth. We are witnessing the end of the North American century. For 80 years, the Western economic order was built on a simple premise. Cooperation makes us stronger. Integration makes us richer. Allies are an asset, not a liability. But we have abandoned that wisdom. We have replaced strategy with populism. We have replaced partnership with coercion. The Stellantis plant closure in Illinois is not a victory. It is a tombstone. It marks the grave of the idea that North America could compete as a unified bloc against the rising East. We are fracturing into smaller, weaker pieces. And in a world of giants, small pieces get crushed. The tragedy of this moment is that it was entirely preventable. We didn't have to do this. We chose to do this. We chose to turn our closest friend into a rival. We chose to turn our integrated economy into a battlefield. And as the dust settles, we are going to look around and realize that we are alone. The factories are gone. The prices are up. The alliances are broken. And the future belongs to those who are smart enough to work together. So, I want to leave you with a question. It is a question that every American and every Canadian needs to ask their leaders right now. If we cannot find a way to trade fairly with the people who look like us, talk like us, and fight beside us, if we cannot make a deal with our brothers, then how can we possibly expect to survive in a world of strangers? The North American Suicide Pact has been signed. The only question left is, can we tear it up before it's too late? Or will we watch from the sidelines as the Pacific century begins? But this story is far from over. There is another player in this game that we haven't even mentioned yet. A player that is using this chaos to make a move on the Arctic. In our next video, we are going to expose the dragon at the door. We will show you how China is using the US-Canada split to secure a military and economic foothold in the Arctic Circle. It is a threat that could change the map of the world forever. You cannot afford to miss that analysis. Click the link on your screen right now. I'll see you there.